Trice.
Uplifting. Whoa, whoa. Bring it together, y'all. Uplifting. Need some uplifting.
New Creation Church, where change takes place. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. Old things are passed away, and behold, all things are become new. New Creation Church, where change takes place.
Welcome to Uplifting Communities Talk Show. This show is to provide information and real strategies for successful living. I'm Terry A. O'Neill.
I'm John L. Brown.
And I'm T.D. Trice. Welcome to today's program. Today we have two special guests with us today, Pastor Lynne Herron and Pastor Sylvester Nogada, joining us from New Creations Church here in Sacramento, California. Both of them have a lot of experience working in the community with homeless, feeding the homeless programs, as well as literary programs for children, and they're going to share their experiences with us today. Thank you for joining the program.
Thank you for having us.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what brings you each to Sacramento, and why did you decide to make this your home?
Well, for me, my parents brought me. I was 15 and a half when I came here.
Wow.
And because my parents were transferred here from Texas, so that's how my journey ended up here.
That's a huge cultural change
Very
from Texas to
right.
California. Two very dramatic, different cultures that you experienced, and then coming in at 15, so you had an experience in Texas and now California. So what was that like, the change?
Well, the change, it wasn't as hard as you think. My dad was in the military, so he was stationed at Atwater Air Force Base. So we went back and forth from here to Texas. And when my mother received her job at then Pacific Bell, Pacific Bell, they moved them here, and me and my siblings came here too. So the culture shock was coming from a predominantly African American and Hispanic community to my parents planting us in a white community. And I think that was the real culture shock.
Sure.
Because Merced is kind of country, so it was kind of pretty equivalent to going back and forth, to Texas. But this was really the culture shock, is moving into a culture of people that I had nothing in common with. So.
I wanted to ask you, you're a pastor.
Yes.
Okay. What made you want to become a pastor? Because I think that is so precious,
So do you want the live version or
the real version?
Christian version?
Or
do you want the real version?
I want the real version.
We want the real.
The real deal.
For me, I actually fought it for a long time, for a very long time. I went all the way to Kenya to do a women's conference, and at that time I was just a reverend. And I heard God say very clearly, I want you to retire and go into full-time ministry. And I didn't quite do it that way. I kind of came home, and I was a hairstylist by trade, so I came back home and continued to do what I was doing, but I continued to do ministry. And God kind of upset my whole foundation. We were at a church, and the church kind of, the pastor stepped down, and it kind of shook the church. And so it kind of shook me too, to where I just wasn't comfortable. I wasn't happy anymore. And God was saying, that's because you have not been listening to me. And so I stepped back. I started off doing just a Bible study at my house. And then they had a vote and decided that we needed a pastor, and they voted me in as the senior pastor. And that's actually how my journey began, and that was in 2005.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
God is good at shaking foundations.
Yeah.
Yes, He is.
Especially when you're
I'm telling you.
disobedient.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but
Doesn't
you know
like
what I'm
this
saying?
so obedient.
Or trying to take your own route.
Right,
Well,
right.
well,
Oh,
she had a. I think God called you is because you had a solid foundation.
Right.
I did. I had a very solid foundation. I had wonderful mentors, wonderful mentors, wonderful spiritual fathers, wonderful spiritual mother. I saw what they went through.
Right.
And so I didn't really want to go through that. And so I just kind of ignored it. And, you know, kind of like kids, if you ignored it, it's going to go away, you think.
Right.
And it didn't. I actually, in 2007, I closed the doors to the church to join another church to help a pastor build their church. And I tried to milk that. And in 2010, God said, no. That's
This
not
is
what
what
I
I-
called you
right.
to do. And He shook that foundation up.
Wow.
And so I ended up back again. My husband and I opened up our doors, and we were just having Sunday morning Bible study. We'd have a worship and sit in a circle and just have Bible study. And again, they decided we need to vote on having a pastor because God is doing something. And I remember sitting back and saying, God, please don't let them choose me.
You saw the light
Please don't let
shine.
them
No, the,
choose
no, the light shone down on
yeah,
you. Strong.
yeah.
Right.
And it was a unanimous vote. One person voted against me, and that was myself. But everyone
still
else,
you were still fighting against
I was
it, huh?
still fighting.
Wow.
And in 2010, God re-established the House of Refuge Ministries at that time.
Now you know for a fact, you can box with me, but you can't box with God.
Right.
You know that.
I thought I could do Jacob and have a different outcome. It didn't work that way. And so here I am today.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank God.
What
Still
about
doing
you?
what God told me
Yeah,
to do.
Sylvester,
Sylvester,
Pastor
tell
Sylvester.
us a little bit about your journey here.
Yeah, I escaped prison in South Africa and I took the next flight to the US. No, I'm kidding.
Say, now you know you're on television.
Not everyone can see me. But no, I was born and bred in Cape Town, South Africa. When I was 10, I was abandoned by my mother. And 2 years later, she died. And I lived by myself for about 2 years. And God brought me through that. Yeah. And as I grew up and I came to Christ in my late teenage years, I really, I feel like God took my pain and my isolation and my plight and turned it into something like a passion for others who might be in similar situations. Yeah. So from then on, I started working. After high school, I immediately went into missions, full-time para-church work. So community development, working in communities with orphans, with young men, and I did that kind of stuff. And we used, I particularly worked with young people who played sports or athletes. So using sport to take the gospel to the world. So if you know this, if you follow soccer, in 2010, South Africa was hosting the World Cup.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So
that's
we,
right.
the Bible says, go into the world and preach the gospel. The world was coming to us. And so we basically, trained about 6,000 churches and prepared them to host the world in South Africa with the gospel. And so that was a big exposure for me as a young person. And I saw God using me, hosting teams from Brazil, from the US, and getting them connected into our community and creating spaces where they could share the gospel. And 2 years later, in 2012, we went to the Olympics in London.
Nice.
And we're in that space too. We're in an immigrant space where churches are struggling to reach out to immigrants from the Middle East. But we use soccer and sport because it's a global language. So we'd invite these kids and they would play and the parents would come and then we'd start sharing the gospel with them. And then there would be like unity and some kind of relationship building kind of. So I was in that space, worked with the UN. So I was always in this global space. And I think everything, and traveling in Africa too, so traveling in other African countries. And I think God really gave me the burden for black people. I really feel that my life's purpose and the rest of my years is I want to live that out, serving the black community, uplifting people. So after doing all of that for about 8 years, I asked myself, how can this be more sustainable? In Africa, a lot of missionaries go over there and they preach and they start clinics and these things, but when they leave, that stops.
Right.
So I was trying to bridge the gap. How can we make what is being started over there more sustainable? So one of the ideas was to come and study in America and get a business degree and get like-minded people who would be willing to invest in Africa. Not just give to an orphan, give $10 to an orphan to feed them, but give $10 to a business idea that could feed an orphan. So thinking about, kind of like, how do we sustain what we do in the community and keep it going? So I'm here, I go to William Jessup, I'm a sophomore over there, and I'm a business major too, and I'm studying business, and that's what I want to do in the future. So yeah, that's what got me here. And the other thing that was on top of my list was to get a degree, and the second thing, I wanted to be with black folk over here. So,
Hey.
so hey, and I got everything, I got all of it.
Okay.
So my first option for school was in upstate New York, and that was cold. And not black.
He's like, cross that off the list.
And one of our mentors, Dr. Ron Elmo, who was a pastor here at Center of Praise, he's a missionary over there. He met me and he said, come to Sacramento and be involved in community development over there and school and church, and that's what I'm doing right now. Yeah.
We're so happy to have you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we sure is, man. It's really needed out here in the United States.
Yes, we need more people involved with the community and preaching the gospel. However, non-traditional ways of getting it out there, especially with this generation, the younger generation especially. You have to be different. You have to kind of
And
find
interesting.
right.
And
right.
interesting. That's
Exactly.
Right.
Ways that'll
Because
serve
you're
them.
competing for their attention.
Right.
With all the other distractions out there, And
That's
so
right.
that's very true.
Wow, one thing, I never really looked at it that way.
I would have
you're
never
competing,
thought. Right.
You're competing against other distractions.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Absolutely.
I mean that's pretty clever to look at it that way.
Right. I mean, my son wants a Nintendo Switch, and he wants a PS4. And they want these things that are interesting for them, and keeps their attention. It's like, well, how do you outdo?
Right.
those
What all
things?
their friends have.
Even
Right.
though you're alive and living and you're right in front of them,
Right.
how do you outdo
Right.
those creative tools that have been thrown in front of
You
them?
got to be innovative,
Yeah.
creative.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
All
All
right.
right.
So speaking of being creative, I see here that you guys, New Creation Church, works with San Juan School District, providing mentorship program for children.
Yeah.
What is
Very
that
needed.
like?
Very necessary.
So a couple of years ago, we had an opportunity to do a bicycle drive. Where it was a Christmas effort, and we got to go into a little Title I school called Greer Elementary.
Okay.
And the children probably would not have gotten anything really big at that time. So it's a really big thing that one of Destiny Church does, and we have the opportunity to partner with them. And it was life-changing for us as far as realizing that there was a school full of children who didn't have anybody to look up to. They didn't have any mentorship. A lot of the kids, their parents weren't even there with them to pick up the bikes.
Wow.
They were there with someone else's parents to pick up their bikes. And so at that time, we realized that we needed to do something. We needed to do something. So God is amazing. He just set it up that night where the principal of the school just happened to be there. And so we connected with him, and we started a mentorship program where we go into the school and we teach the kids crafts. We teach them how to bake. We have a team that goes in and plays sports with them. They play basketball, and so instead of fighting at lunchtime, we have something for them to do. And then my daughter, who is a cheerleader and dance, she goes up there and teaches the children how to take that energy and put it into cheer and put it into dance. And so it's been really, really cool. It's a different strategy versus sitting down trying to get them to do paperwork and sitting them down and try to speak stuff over their life, but literally living life with them. And so we've been able to establish some great relationships with these children through these efforts. So.
Awesome.
That is great.
Beautiful.
It
Beautiful.
is.
I mean, that's beautiful, man.
Baking.
Yeah.
You know, and as she said baking, the first thing popped in my head was Junior Master Chef.
Yes.
You know, because I wonder how these kids, they're being so young, know how to bake, you know, pastries and stuff like that, you know.
I mean, they need that because they don't get it. Like my mother used to teach to neighborhood kids just out of her home, sewing classes and cooking classes, and you know that was in the 70s. So I mean, a lot of kids nowadays they don't get that.
They don't.
So
I remember my sister. She took homemade. You know, went back.
Homemade.
Yeah, home economics.
Well, anyway, home economics. Yeah. But anyway, she used to bake. She'd come back home to bake some cookies, and I said, "They don't taste that good."
she did it herself.
Look here. And then I said, "Well, let me try another one."
Oh, he's pulling her leg over here.
That's a way to get it.
That's funny. I know, right?
Oh, shucks.
Another thing you mentioned, Pastor, was the bikes, and the fact that some of the kids were not with their parents to pick up the bikes. And what came to my mind was, you know, bikes are not the same as they used to be. Now they have motors on them.
Nothing is the same as it used to be.
You're not even pedaling the bikes anymore.
Well, they didn't get those kind of bikes. I'm sure you didn't get those
motorbikes.
motorbikes
Now.
Yeah.
You know, they just shoot down the street and you. Oh my gosh, what is up with that?
Lazy.
It used to be exercise.
You know, we've become a lazy society, but that's
We
a
really
whole
have.
nother
That's a
subject
whole
for
nother
another.
TV show.
Exactly.
Okay.
Can you tell us a little bit about tell us what CCDA stands for and the Black Child Legacy? What is that about?
So CCDA is the Christian. Oh my goodness, it is.
See, you had Mr. Brown making up acronyms.
Don't make up anything. It's the Christian. Oh my goodness, why I just. The Christian Correlation Development Association. There we go.
All right.
There we go. So
I
what
had
it
the
is
last
it
one.
actually is it is a program that we were actually able to partner with as well. My husband and another gentleman from our church actually were the leaders for the sect here in Sacramento. And so we hosted it, and it really is trying to help the build the Black community and building gaps. And you know, so creating spaces for the Black community to not just communicate in our community, but communicate in other community as well. So it was
Sacramento's
really
very diverse.
very, very diverse.
One of the most
Very
diverse
diverse,
cities
but
in the
very
country.
segregated at the same time.
At the same time.
And so it's definitely something that is needed here. It's a wonderful, wonderful organization. Believe it came up out of the Southern Cal, if I'm not mistaken. But just if you ever get a chance, just kind of read up on it. It's wonderful learning just different ways of communicating and living life with people who are different than you. We tend to always want to be kind of sect with people who are like us, versus reaching out and saying, you know what, let's try something different. Let's get a different perspective, and not just us get a different perspective, but how can we help them see a different view or context of who we are. We're not what the media says we are.
Change the
We're
narrative.
change the narrative of who we are.
But how would you go about doing that?
I think it is coming to the table. I think you have to create environments where you can sit at the table and be able to discuss those things freely. Discuss those things without offense, without judgment. And I think it's something that we struggle with, but I think it's something that it is absolutely necessary. I have the opportunity to work for Fuller Institute, and I'm one of the facilitators for the MICA group, which is another group that brings people together across different generations, different denominations, different ethnicities, different communities, bringing them together and kind of doing the same thing and saying, let's sit at the table and let's talk about these issues, and then let's figure out how do we come to a common goal, a common denominator, or where we can begin to walk out something different. And it's challenging.
Yeah.
It's challenging because
Yeah.
when you're trying to bring all these different ethnicities and different communities and personalities and denominations together, sometimes it could go south. But I think if we come for the intentional purposes of what can we do to change the narrative of Sacramento, let's just start here in Sacramento. What can we do to change that narrative that could possibly be a model to change the world? And so that's a lot of what we invest in is community involvement in changing the community.
And do they honor a child? Because I see the Black Child Legacy here. Is that
So Black Child Legacy is a different organization.
okay?
It actually is an organization that is geared to cutting down on African American deaths of our children. We have the highest rate of death with children than any other race. And so Black Child Legacy is a company that partners up with other organizations such as our church and others to help figure out ways that we can educate Black people so that we can cut down on the deaths of our children.
Okay. Yeah.
And Sylvester, your role.
I mean, yeah, she's that's her lane.
Oh, okay. So you obviously work under the pastor.
Right.
Running
Okay.
any of the programs in particular?
Yeah. So definitely involved in. My passion is training up people in the church that eventually go out and be part of those programs. So working with the ministers and leaders in our church who are passionate about those things. And just to latch on that, just to give a global perspective, since I'm here from South Africa. In South Africa, you know about apartheid. It ended in 1994. And so there was the Truth and the Reconciliation Commission. People were discussing, forgiveness, amnesty, and all of those ideas. But South Africa is very much segregated, even 25 years later. And so kind of like
Continue.
Yeah. So kind of like this idea of reconciliation is something that is really close to my heart. And I think our church is in a very unique space where we're even kind of like recruiting and having members in our church of other ethnicities and races. So,
So if you would, just take a moment to communicate with the audience there about how they can be involved or get involved with either your church or with any of the organizations programs that you work with.
Actually, if you go to our Facebook page, our website is under construction right now. Hopefully it'll be up within the next couple of weeks. But our Facebook page, New Creation Church Arden, you can find out all information. We put up everything that we're doing is on our Facebook page. And you can definitely go there. Or you can call us at 916-949-9019. And that is our church phone, and somebody will be there to help navigate you through that as well.
Terrific. Thank you so very much for being our guest today.
Yes, thank
Pastor
you.
Lynne Herron and Pastor Sylvester Nogada.
yes.
And thank you guys so much for joining us. We are Uplifting Communities TV talk show, and we'd like to thank you so very much for sharing your time with us today. Would you please consider looking on Facebook for Uplifting Communities, the TV talk show, and liking us, friend us. And we would love to share this episode along with others that we have created with you, because the goal here is to challenge you to uplift your community. And with that, for our guests from New Creation Church, I'm T.D. Trice.
I'm Terry A. O'Neill.
And I'm John L. Brown.
I also would like to extend thanks to Lynette, Johanna, Marilyn, Regis, my son, Josh, who's in there in the control room, and our director, John Jackson. Thank you guys so very much for helping us with the program today. Thanks for watching.
And I want to add something myself. I want to thank TD, Josh, for coming out with Uplifting Communities last Saturday and clean up. We was out there cleaning the streets, y'all. Thank
That's
you very,
something
very
we
much.
want to work on, right?
That's
we
right.
want to work on a project called Clean Streets. So we'll get with that in another program. Thank you guys so much for watching.
Bye-bye.
So we can get it right. We can get it right.